everybody out there in YouTube land. I've been asked to talk about racism. So I guess I'm going to take a little bit of time today to do just that. Racism, well, what is there to really say about it? I think most reasonable people in our day and age realize it's a very bad thing. But unfortunately, there are still those out there who cling to some other ideas. You have groups out there like the white supremacists, the KKK on one side, the white racists. On the other side, you have black racists like the Nation of Islam. Either way, it's a very bad thing. And of course, there's racism in other ways. My best friend is black. And I don't call him my black best friend or my African American best friend. He's just my best friend. I was once engaged to a black woman. And I can tell you firsthand, it doesn't matter. We're all just people. But I've learned some things from the exposure I've had to the black race, for example. That racism exists in ways sometimes we don't even think about. You know, I mean, for example, sometimes there's racism between different kinds of blacks, between darker blacks and lighter blacks. There's racism between, classes of people. There's racism between white people and Native American people. I also grew up in an area where there were lots of Native Americans. Obviously, also, with Mexican Americans and whatnot. There's racism all over the place, unfortunately. But as I said, most reasonable people are working hard to get away from that. Some things I want to make mention of. Did you know that, scientifically speaking, genetically speaking, there's less than a 0.2% difference between the races? Now, many scientists have said that that's so insignificant that it's hardly worth defining racial divides, racial differences, because basically, really, it's a very insignificant factor. We're all Homo sapiens, we're all human beings. The differences that occur in a racial sense aren't really racial at all, because there's really just the human race. The differences in how we appear, it's just a cosmetic thing. The result really of what they would commonly call microevolution or natural selection. But when it really comes down to it, there's no difference in our species or our class, really. I mean, we're the human race. And another thing I find very interesting is that long before science ever figured that out, the Bible said it. If you go to the book of Acts, chapter 17, verse 26, it tells you there that God made every nation, all the people of all the nations, from one blood. We're all related to one blood that God made. That verse in and of itself bars any possibility for racism. We also have a verse that says there's no difference between Greek and Jew and male and female, and also pointing out that we're all humans. God loves us all the same. And so, no matter how you look at it, there's no reason for racism. And, there's a lot of bad things that have happened in the past because of racism. Slavery and, of course, the wars that took place with Native Americans when this country was being founded. But I think a big mistake we make, sometimes that minorities make, is wanting to hold on to that past. And, I've been personally spit on by Native Americans just because I was white. And some of them carry that kind of hatred around with them for something that happened long before I was ever born, long before my grandfather was born. And that's just something I think is very counterproductive to the cause of human unity, is to carry hatred around because of the past. There are still people in the world who are doing things because of racism. But most of us I think, are trying hard to change that fact. And we need to deal with people for who they are, not for somebody else who was the same color as them, something that they might have done sometime in history. We can't blame people today for things like that. So we got to push all that kind of junk aside, and we got to, judge a man by the content of his character, right? Because that's who we are. Doesn't have anything to do with what we look like. So there's no reasons for racism. Not from the biblical point of view, and not even from the scientific point of view. Unfortunately, in the past, some would have argued with that. Darwin, for example, who believed in macroevolution. Darwin actually believed that people such as the blacks and the Australian Aborigines were lower forms of human life. And some racist people who took up with that idea used it as a good excuse to treat people of those races poorly, because they were lower forms of human life. That's a sad chapter in our scientific history. And hopefully most of us are leaving those kind of antiquated ideas behind us. But in reality, going with what we know from both science and the Bible, really, there's no cause to treat each other differently. We are all one human race.